All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're watching this. I'm Ashley Campbell, the managing editor with IJSPT, and I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Ruben Gobisi today with PT Genie, one of our founding sponsors. And I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Gobisi just introduce himself real quick, kind of his background, where he comes from, and PT Genie and how he got that started. And then we'll get into some questions and some introduction of exactly what PT Genie is.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I too am honored to be a sponsor for IJSPT. I think you are fantastic. I think your vision and your mission is on point, and I think it'll be an important part of the physical therapy educational system really over the long term. Uh, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, as you may know, and obviously we're friends for several years. And I, like you, have been desirous of getting better at what I do every day. I want to get better. I want to improve. I want to understand what it is we do for patients and how we change their quality of life and make it better. We at least strive to do that. And to me, the whole ethos of PT Genie is really started with research. Larry Higgins and I started doing research many years ago and have published a lot of papers on different aspects of what we do in the shoulder world. I'm an orthopedic shoulder surgeon, and we wanted to study the rehab part of it a lot more closely. And we found that seeing surgeons, as you know, seeing patients at 6-week intervals or whatever, we lose a lot of the intervening data on what happens to them and exactly how are they recovering and what protocols are they all using? I mean, I know that, of course, they listen exactly to what I say every single day, right? No, but basically, how do they do that? So PT Genie really started as a behavioral study using technology, and it's sort of blossomed into a commercial product because of what's happened. As we'll go over in a few minutes, what's happening and what's happened in the CMS marketplace, if you will.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we've known each other for a few years, and I've been very fortunate to be kind of on the front lines with PT Genie and what you guys are doing and how it's evolved over the years, which is really exciting. And I know you're going to get into showing us some of that here in a few minutes. But I think in the course of that time, we've realized that a lot of our values align. You mentioned research, and I think how important it is to disseminate that research and get it out there to the public so that the therapists know, the doctors know, and even more importantly, that the patients know. It's interesting how often now in the land of Google and PubMed and things of that nature, how often I have patients walking in the door handing me research.
Right.
So I think it's really important that good, solid, strong research gets put out there, especially in the open access world. And so I know we've had conversations in the past, but why did PT Genie want to get in with us? You guys were a founding sponsor. You stepped up and said, hey, we're here to support you. What is it about IJSPT that you mostly resonate with that made you want to do that, besides obviously getting to work with me?
Absolutely. That's a big bonus. You said it well yourself. I mean, look, we believe firmly at the core that understanding what we do is important, meaning researching what we do is important. We also understand that the realities in the physical therapy world for peer-reviewed literature, which is important, right? We all want ideas, but we want good ideas that have been thoughtfully assessed and evaluated, so i.e. peer-reviewed. And so here we have a paradigm where it's very expensive to get research published. It just costs money. And the reality is a lot of the therapists that I've worked with, a lot of therapists that a lot of therapists I know who are really at the top of their game, or at least thinking through and grappling with some of the real problems that they see every day. It's expensive to take that and take those ideas and share them and disseminate them with your peer group. So IJSPT has really focused on the problem of the financial burden and really saying, okay, we will provide the infrastructure. We'll relieve the financial burden, $25 to submit to get your submission started, reviewed, and published is an unbelievable gig. So we wanted to support that because PT Genie, after all, is about new ideas and bringing those new ideas and really grappling with the problems and sorting it out and figuring it out. That's what we do in the healthcare delivery world for therapy. Well, we want that. A lot of our future ideas are going to come out of people who may not otherwise have published, who may be publishing in IJSPT. So we're a big believer in that it's an investment in all our collective future, and that's why we do it.
And we appreciate that. And that's a big part of me starting kind of the Sponsor Spotlight series. that this is a part of, is making sure our readers understand that the reason they're getting to read this for free, the reason our authors get to publish for free, is because of the support of our sponsors. And we've, tried to really align with companies who get that. So we appreciate it. So let's get into a little bit about what PT Genie is. I think this is a really important that, we all have cool social media posts and things of that nature, but really this is, I think, a technology and a solution that is a little harder to understand just via a social media post. So I know today you're going to walk us through exactly kind of what PT Genie is and how it could benefit us in the therapy world. And some people know I work with Dr. Thomas Bird, who's a hip arthroscopist, and we see in our practice probably about 80% of our patients who don't live in our general Middle Tennessee vicinity. And so keeping tabs on those patients is a real challenge. And we have a variety of things that we utilize to do that. But even in those that see patients weekly, what if your patient only can afford to come once a week and you really need to be checking on them maybe 2 or 3 times a week? So I think there's a lot that's coming in the changes that we've seen in the last 2 years with people getting stuck at home and access and costs. And so I'm going to let you take it away, kind of walk us through. I know you have a slide deck that you can share with us. Walk us through PT Genie and show us what sort of solutions that you have from a therapist standpoint.
Excellent, will do. So thank you for that introduction, Ash. And I'm going to start really with something that we're all grappling with, whether it's practices or hospital systems or individual therapists or collective big retail therapy companies. We are all feeling the pain points in the PT brick and mortar traditional PT practices. And I think we all recognize there's a need for a change. It doesn't mean we need to blow up the current brick and mortar therapy practice. It means that we need an ancillary healthcare delivery model. I think that's what it means. And we're feeling the pressure from staffing, where it's very difficult to find staff, as we all know. We're in a new America now. Reimbursement pressures, huge, and they're worsening. Early discharge, or translated patient out of pocket pressure. And inflation. I mean, overhead is rising no matter what we do in all facets of our world. It is putting pressure on ultimately the ability to make the traditional PT practices profitable. And it's a struggle to keep that. It really is. We're in the fight. So what is it that we're bringing to the table? Well, PT Genie, if you say, well, first of all, what is PT Genie? We think of it as really 2 modules, if you will. There's a assessments module, which is, we all know, assessments, risk stratification, in other words, where we leverage 3D or LiDAR technology using machine learning and AI software algorithms on an iOS or Android platform to do MSK assessments. So we basically have taken all the stuff that you do visibly, in the office with a patient, and basically ones and zeros them. We digitize them and put them in, and you'll see that in a little demo shortly, so that you can do it at a high volume and do it at a quantitative way. The second module we have is a virtual monitored rehab. And this is really, I think of it as a home exercise program using the 2D front-facing camera on your cell phone. So the patients bring the hardware and there's nothing to wear. There's no wearable component. You just use the patient's tablets or cell phones. And again, iOS or Android platform. And you can customize templated programs and adjust them ad infinitum, which I'll show you in a second. But what you're really doing is driving the home exercise program. And it turns out that you can monetize that. And we'll show you how. We are the only platform in the marketplace right now that has a fully developed 3D and 2D motion capture system. So you can do it on cell phones, tablets, or with now very shortly on iPads. And you can do it in the office or at home. And we basically look at the 2D software as an at-home HEP program and the 3D software as the in-office assessments program. We'll show you how they work in practical reality. In terms of, let's start with the 2D program, the at-home program. We've designed that obviously for patients who've now gotten accustomed to be portable, on demand, easy to use, customizable, personal, kind of like this is personal today, right? On a Zoom, we've gotten used to this being normal, and cost-effective for patients. How it works is essentially, this is basically going to be a video of the front of an iPhone, so all of this is deployed virtually. I'll show you in a second. They get a QR code for the Apple or Android that launches them into a session that's designed for them. They can look at the thumbnails, watch the videos to explain the exercises. You can edit all the explanations and add videos, etc. ad infinitum. You can, it'll ask them once they're done with that, hey, what's your pain score? And then I've muted this, but it has a lot of verbal feedback to the patient. They put their phone down, they say, it says ready, they say ready, and then off they go. So they've looked at the thumbnails, and the yellow represents the, well, I should say the green represents what the provider, the therapist wants them to hit, their goal for that day. And it says, keep going, keep going. If you're short, great. If you're in the green zone, if you go too far, it says to back down. The AI software knows the difference between passive and active motion. So it can tell whether you're doing it passively and actively, but it also can tell if you're doing the wrong side, if you will. It knows the difference between right and left. And obviously if you go quickly and it says, oh man, you're out of the zone, it'll say back down, please. You know what I mean? It allows you to quantitatively grade compliance. It's giving you a tremendous amount of data about your patient, and it tells the patient the data too. So, hey, look, you had 5 reps in the zone, 1 above and 1 below. And we have this whole platform built out for hips, knees, shoulders, neck, back, elbow, wrist, and we're working on the hands and toes. So that's what that's going. We've also integrated the CLX TheraBand, so you can actually do strengthening. So once you get out, each of these, it can rep count it. It's all calibrated to the CLX TheraBand, color-wise. And we also have time-based exercises. Do the pendulum for 10 minutes. So time-based, rep-based, tracked motion, all of those happen. We have in-app messaging where it tells the patient every day, don't forget to do your second session. Do this, do that. So it's very, very helpful. So that's what it looks like from the patient side. In terms of the business behind the platform, here's what our software is really built around. Initially, we started, as you may or may not know, it was a point of angst for all of us, was that until January of this year, therapists really couldn't bill remote monitoring codes. But thank God, this year, we'll talk about that in a second, they've changed that. But PT Genie has a lot of experience. We've deployed a lot of these into practices, but with physicians using remote monitoring for home exercise programs, and have learned a lot, which we can bring to bear on this current release now with the therapy world, because we've learned a lot about how to deploy the workflow in a practice for therapists from our experience with remote monitoring in docs. So what did happen in January? Well, a couple of things. One of them was, as you know, telehealth got expanded, and there's a lukewarm sentiment about telehealth, and I think there's a good reason for that lukewarm sentiment, meaning many people experienced with COVID that deploying a telehealth solution that replicated the in-office visit, meaning the 3.2 units per hour hour visit, did not work well. Patients did not like it. Therapists did not like it. No one liked it. Okay, but we're going to show you how we believe deploying telehealth differently will help solve that problem. That being said, they've extended that to 2023. They've also released these new set of codes. It's essentially the remote monitoring codes for therapists. They're called remote therapeutic monitoring codes, and they allow therapists now to bill for RTM, or we call them RTM codes, so RPM codes. And for us, again, we've always been, since 2018, we've really been focused on RPM, remote monitoring. We believe that was the future, and we believe that CMS's move acknowledges the value of remote monitoring softwares like ourselves. And we certainly have the most experience in this solution for this vertical. There are other companies like Hinge and Sword, but they aren't playing in this space and don't have the experience that we have in this space for remote monitoring. They're going through the employer, actually. So, remote monitoring codes, these are remote monitoring codes that they have here. They have parity with the payer parity with the remote patient monitoring codes. The RPM codes, in other words, and RTM codes are being paid the same. So that's great. And when we talk about workflow in deploying a virtual program like this in a practice, we've learned that it's essentially what's amazing about this is all of these individuals who are deploying your digital therapy practice, while they're going to work with your in-office therapist, they can be all virtual. So none of these people have to be sitting in your office. And that's a big deal because most practices don't have space for all these new people sitting around. So we have a scheduler that's virtual, an ATC or a PTA in the case of RTM codes, and a PT, okay? And essentially what we do is the virtual scheduler will work through the current workflow of a therapy practice to access the EMR see the schedule when somebody calls in. They can either hit them on the front end with a phone call, or through the back end when the person's put on the schedule on the EMR. The schedule will essentially go in and say, hey, where are you doing your therapy? Hopefully they're going to do it right there. When are you doing your therapy? Because that's the first, in a therapy practice, that's the really key. How fast can you get them in? If they can get them, if the patient can be seen by a therapist in your practice quickly, that's task number one. They say, great, you're going to come in and see us, and we're going to start you with credentials, meaning username and password, HIPAA compliant, and a QR code, okay? So that when you see the therapist in the office, you're already set up for your home exercise program, and meaning you have the credentials, and the therapist can assign the actual program. Secondly, the task number two will be the scheduler will then say, okay, I'm going to assign you for a virtual ATC or PTA in this case, and the PTA will, after the initial eval is done in the office, will then assign, based on the notes in the record, will assign the appropriate plan of care for the home exercise program. Task number three really applies to those people. If your therapy practice cannot get them in quickly, you don't want them to call the next therapy center. You want to capture those patients. So if they can't get in with your therapist for initial eval quickly, okay, and you can set the parameters, 72 hours, 24 hours, whatever you want. But basically, if you can't get in quickly, then you do an initial eval virtually. And that way they can get started on a home exercise program and then pick up in the office when you can get them in, and if you, or stay on the virtual, however you like it. So the PTA function in the remote, I have ATC there for remote monitoring, but for our TM codes, it's PTAs. Okay, so PTAs are going to serve the same functions of an ATC. They're going to assign the plan of care. They're going to monitor the dashboard, and I'll show you that in a second. They're going to make sure that all these patients who are coming to your office, when they're at home, are being followed every day on the platform. The PTs you're going to use based on the virtual PTs, that is, you're going to use based on whether or not those patients are coming to your office. So in the case that Ashley brought up, where somebody's coming in from out of town, you're going to dose them with quick 1 Therex unit visits once a week to make sure that they're staying on the protocol that you want them to be on, no matter where they're going. And they can show that to their therapist where they live, so the therapist understands so the two therapy companies are simpatico. They understand it's all on the system. There's communication, everybody gets it. And so it's leveraging technology for that. Here's what it looks like from the provider facing. So I showed you earlier the iPhone, and here's what it is. So we can integrate with EMRs. We have an API-based platform. So all the demographics, once we integrate, will be pulled in to this. If not, the scheduler will collect them, or the front desk scheduler for your practice will collect them, and it'll go into the system. And so once it's scheduled, essentially the scheduler, once the patient's in the system, the scheduler will go to the patient and say, ma'am, sir, when do you want to, I want to schedule a PTA call. So that starts the home exercise program. They'll say, what time do you want, and then it'll show up on the PTA's dashboard. The PTA, when the time comes, they'll click the button for all their scheduled encounters, interactions, and they'll talk. And while they're talking to the patient virtually, they can be scrolling through on the left-hand side of the screen, the actual dashboard. How's that patient doing? They can get real time. Okay, yes, Mrs. Jones, you're really doing well on this exercise, or you're struggling with that exercise. It's real-time data, so they can keep a focused interaction of 10 minutes or less, okay? They can document real quick, and that can get pushed to the EMR and so on. In terms of the dashboard, when the PTAs are coming in to look at all the patients, they can look at the clinical summary. So this is not a real patient, but these are basically filled in, where you can see compliance, you can see pain, you can see range of motion performance. Here is the scheduling platform. You can see the plan of cares. You can see all the different interactions in the plan of cares for every patient, and you can edit them ad infinitum. You can change the start date for the home exercise program, who the provider is. You can add and change and edit the exercises. Here's an example of an elbow flexion exercise. You can say, okay, I'm going to edit that. You can change the reps, the number of sets, the range of motion parameters, the green, if you will. And you can, the force, if you slide the force button over, it'll ask you it'll drop down which color CLX TheraBand you want to use. So you can change these all as much as you want. And if let's say a patient's going through a session and they're just not progressing, you can duplicate days, you can move exercises around, and it's very, very user friendly. You can change your order of exercise, etc. So it's a very easy software, and like I said, it's API based, so it's easy to integrate into an EMR for us. It usually takes 60 days. So here's a notes section. Every single interaction, whether it's a scheduler, a PTA, a PT, All of those will be documented once the chart is touched, and you can assign documents. If they ask you, hey, I want to see a dietary change, da da da, you want to assign a PDF, boom, you can send it through the app on their phone, and right, it's very, very, very simple to do. And so that's what that side looks like. Now I'm going to switch gears, Ash, and I'm going to share about the 3D module, because we think this is pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
This is meant for the in-office program. So basically, what this is essentially for the office, and you're going to use this to in your initial evals to do a quick objective measurement, or in screens. So you can do these at schools if you're covering schools. We'll show you in a second. So here's my favorite assessment. This is for people who have gait risk. So before we play this video, I'm going to explain the interface. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the typical parameters you all are so good at seeing in real time, by visual inspection, things like stride length and cadence and talgic ratio and Trendelenburg angle. All of these things that we measure in the office, or you all measure in the office, we've put into the software, and the 3D camera can capture in real time.
And you get actual objective data, not just me saying stride length is asymmetrical.
Exactly. And it's measured against the data in the literature. So the algorithms are built on what's been published in the literature. On the right-hand side, you see the cross-eye bullseye, and that's the difference between the 2D camera on your phone and the 3D camera, okay? The 3D camera it's a transverse plane looking over the top of the patient. Things like sway can be seen, etc. So you're seeing that in real time. And what we do is we say, okay, you need about 10 to 12 feet, walk normally. Then you'll see, we'll assess the risk. And then we have them repeat this. If they're a high risk for fall, if our algorithm says, ma'am, you're a high risk for fall, we take a cane and put it in their right hand and have them go right foot forward. We repeat this with the cane in the right hand, left foot forward, cane in the left hand now, right foot forward, cane in the left hand, left foot forward, and try to get a score that optimizes where they're at. And the patient can see it too. So it's not like, we're making it up. They see the objective data themselves. And so you have this lady who's got a bad back, hip, and knee. So she's got a bunch of, there's a data on the left-hand side you see, and we won't go through the algorithm, and here she has a cane in her right hand, left foot forward, and you're gonna see that, yeah, for her constellation of problems, this normalizes her. So you say, ma'am, this is what you need, and we're gonna work on corrective exercises in the office to try to get you off of that. You know what I mean? Here's the ACL jump test, and we have this built in. So this gal actually did have an ACL tear, and she knew that already. But basically, here's one where quickly you can screen a whole high school of athletes and get to who's at high risk, and then corrective exercises, deploy them. Here's our concussion testing, where you do this barefoot with a pad, eyes closed, 20 seconds, eyes open, 20 seconds, you know the deal. A good test of the vestibular system, much similar to Cobalt than Impact, obviously. So, and this is really quick. You can go screen a whole high school, get their baseline. If they go on the field right on the sideline, you could do an intent and do another assessment and determine if they're within 10 to 15% of their baseline, they can go back into play, because you have that in the cloud. You have their data. If they're not better, they're back. If they're outside of that range, then you got to pull them off. And so this is one when you do the vestibular training exercises in the office and at home, and that drives the return to sport. So how do you use this in a practice? Well, let's say your practice is covering a high school, and you have I'm going to very easily, you could screen, hey, we're going to do free screenings, or you're going to charge $25 for a screen, whatever. You can do a screen at the high school you're covering. And that gives the parents and the coaches and everybody comfort that you have, just like now, a dynamic test for concussion, ACL, and CAMS. CAMS are a total body test. It tests head to toe, and it get a baseline of your mobility and stability all the way through the body. So concussion obviously tests concussion, ACL obviously tests ACL. The CAMS really gives you a overall map of the person's overall mobility and stability joint by joint, and it's a pretty dang cool test. We don't probably have time to do it here, but it's 12 maneuvers you do in 3 minutes. It's nice. But ultimately, if somebody fails one of these assessments, so if 1,000 kids have an assessment, and then 300 of them during the school year have a suspect for a head injury, they come in, they generate initial eval, they generate sessions, et cetera, et cetera. They also generate home exercise program, meaning remote RTM monitoring in addition to their in-office visits. And it can be, it's not as big as RTM as an overall program, but it's not nothing either. You know, it's
Sure.
a fair amount of money, and I think it's a huge driver for marketing, for our
Yeah.
practice to come with new technology and really have it where mom and dad see that they have it on their phone. That's a little different than what's going on out there right now.
Right.
So you know, and there's that connectivity. In terms of the numbers, if you take a patient in our RPM world, because RTM for therapists just started in January, and by the time it rolls out to commercials, it's probably going to be around March or April. You know, by the time the fee schedules get uploaded, but we have a lot of experience with RPM, and so we know how people behave on that. Most people, because we can go all the way up to strengthening with the bands, stay on there a little over 3 months on the program, which is, think about that. That's amazing. If your average patient staying on 3 months, that's pretty good. And if you look at the CMS pay rate, CMS, so we don't assume better or worse because we have practices in both. But CMS rates $152 a month. You figure that's 3 months or so on that. It's $500. You take out the ATC or PTA, you know, so $58 to $65 for that. 5% admin costs, give or take. PT Genie costs $35 a month. And actually, our model, we can do this model in multiple different ways. We have different ways of doing this. And essentially, your net profit, if you look at it, telehealth, look how crazy this is. Telehealth, on the other hand, is giving you a net profit of 231. So your average total CMS rates for each patient on a 3-month protocol is about $500 of net profit. So it's not, that's not trivial. You know, that's a profit margin of 50%, 54% to be exactly. So considering where therapy practices now, national average for profitability is somewhere prior to this year's cut was 11 to 18%. So it's a big 54% profit margin versus 11 to 18% before this latest 15% cut is a big deal. If you have a large practice you're part of, and you look at it and you go, wow, you know, you had 1,000 patients a month. And think about this. For us, 1,000 patients a month means, think about the math here. If each patient you bring on is on for 3 months, that means if you had 100 patients month 1, new patients, okay, on your system, month 2, you had 200 patients because the 100 from the first month are still on.
Right.
Month 3, you have 300 patients. That means by each 100 patients a month will generate a rolling average of 300 patients a month. So this really means 300 new patients a month. So if you have a big consortium practice that's generating 300 patients a month, you can drive some real revenue through this with just an 80% deployment. And we're assuming realistic numbers, 80% of success in PT telehealth, which is 1 Therex unit bills, not 3 or 4 Therex units. It's real money. So you look at this in EMR integration, the same thing. We can integrate with EMRs, no problem. We're integrated with Athena, Epic. We can do a lot of the other ones that are based on APIs. We have a very good API system. And ultimately, what I'd say is, you know, we want to be the darlings of the therapy world. PT Genie does, because we have been, just like the APTA, we have been pushing for the therapists to be able to bill for remote monitoring. I mean, for Pete's sake, therapists are the ones who are delivering the care. So
Right.
it never made any sense to begin with. But that being said, that's now created a new avenue, a new kind of practice and healthcare delivery system for which we are very much poised to help the therapy world deliver. And so we think that if we solve the problems for the therapists by creating this digital therapy. Remember, we're the only ones who have all the EMR integration, the telehealth platform, the remote monitoring dashboards, all that stuff built into our system, 2D and 3D. And, you know, we want to know if there's anybody we can help out there.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm so glad we were able to do this because, you know, I've seen this before. I'm very familiar with PT Genie, but if you're not, I think, again, as I said, I think looking at, you know, a social media post or an email or something, it's like, I don't necessarily comprehend and the value that brings into your PT practice from a financial standpoint, but most importantly, how we can benefit our patients. Again, you know, you're a surgeon, but you know the value of your surgeries are not successful without what the therapists are able to do and without the compliance of the patients. And I think anything we can do to enhance the compliance of the patients, make it easier for them to get what they need, and, you know, bring additional value added to their world is beneficial. And I've had this conversation a lot. I'm actually in San Antonio right now at CSM. And I've had this conversation a lot with several therapists over the course of the last 48 hours is just, you know, PTs really need to value our time and our expertise, and what we're able to do. And I think we have a bad habit of devaluing what we do, because sometimes it's hard to get profit out of something. The RTM codes are such a huge win for us in the therapy world. And as you mentioned, the
100%.
APTA has been pushing for it. You guys have been pushing for it. You've been able to show objective data that it works in the RPM world. And that's helped us as therapists. So we appreciate your legwork on that. So I think
Absolutely.
this is such a exciting, fun time to, take something that almost got forced upon us in the last couple of years, and run with it. And also, I think the 3D piece that you showed at the end, although that was a brief synopsis of what the capabilities are, that's really exciting too. Like you said, if you cover a high school, you go screen people at the start of the season, one, they want it. Even if it costs them $20 to do it, every parent wants that for their kid. So we shouldn't feel bad about going out and using our expertise to do that. So I appreciate you bringing a product to the market that's able to help us do that. So last thing on these, I always have to make sure we have to humanize you a little bit. So I usually come up with a couple random on the fly questions.
Sure.
Your first one is going to be, if you had to watch one movie on repeat for the rest of your life and it's the only movie you could ever watch, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? I would probably choose The Chosen.
You would choose The Chosen?
Yeah, I really like that series.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like that series.
All right. Next one is, if you had to lick a doorknob at McDonald's or Burger King, which one would you pick?
Burger King.
Burger King. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a reason behind that?
No, they're both equally disgusting. Yes.
I know everyone's like, what about Chick-fil-A? I'm like, that was not an option.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A for sure.
Chick-fil-A, fine.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A, I'll lick the doorknob. Yep.
All right. And since, well, I know you technically, you live in Cleveland, but you also kind of live in Florida. So this was one someone threw out at me. So I'll ask you if you have a favorite Florida man story off the top of your head.
Florida man?
Yeah. Do you know the Florida man stories, or is that just not?
I don't know the Florida.
Okay. All right.
You have to teach me about the Florida.
Next time
I know plenty of Florida men. I don't know about the Florida man. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Well, next time I'm in Orlando, we'll have a sit down.
You have to give me a breakdown.
We'll have a breakdown of what Florida man stories are.
I've heard of Montana. I don't know about the Florida man. I gotta learn about that.
Okay. We'll hit that next time I'm there. Anything else you want to add for people to know about, or?
No, I mean, really, I really think that IJSPT is really going to grow over the next couple of years. And I think that as we get, it's one of those things where once you get the snowball going, I think people realize the value of being able to disseminate ideas and have peer review that's affordable and really focused on really what people want to learn and understand from each other. Yeah, I think it'll take off. So I'm excited about it.
Well, I'll put contact information up as regards to getting in touch if people have interest in PT Genie, but I do know we plan on doing a follow-up webinar where we can actually get some live interaction, have people who have interest on and asking questions. We can do some more of the 3D demo and everything like that and have a little bit of fun. So I appreciate you taking your time to be with us today, and we'll be seeing more of you. I know, I'm sure in the future. So
thank you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
Thanks.